Hi, folks, and welcome. This is Inside the Leader's Mind, where what's in the way becomes the way. I'm your host, David Suson. Today's guest is someone who is not just imagining the future, he's building it. Jim Dukhovny, he's the CEO of one of four co-founders of Alef Aeronautics. It's a company turning a century-old science fiction dream into something you can actually drive. Alef is behind the world's first flying car approved by the FAA to fly, a vehicle designed to drive on the street, take off vertically, and lift off above traffic with a flight system that challenges every assumption about what a flying car can be. Alef received the FAA Special Airworthiness Certificate for this vehicle, and the vision has attracted investors like Tim Draper, well-known venture capitalist who backed Tesla, SpaceX, and other breakthrough technologies. And media outlets around the world have taken notice because this is no longer science fiction. It is underway. And what fascinates me about Jim is not just the flying car, it's the thinking that made it possible. He thinks in possibilities instead of limits. He challenges assumptions most people never question. And he has spent years pushing toward a vision that many once believed was impossible. This is not just a story about technology, it's a story about vision, refusing to accept limitations. And today we get to explore what it takes to build something the world has never seen, and how to think differently when the odds feel stacked against you, and what the future might look like when we travel above road instead of sitting in traffic. Jim, welcome to Inside the Leader's Mind.
Thank you, David.
I'm so excited to have you here learning about flying cars. And it's true, you see it on, Back to the Future, you see stuff everywhere. So for someone who is completely new, they haven't seen you on other podcasts or interviews, they haven't watched the major news outlets that have covered some of this or YouTube. And if someone asks you, what does Aleph build? Where do you start that explanation?
Well, so this is not my first startup, and unlike other startups, the advantage here is when people ask what Alef do, there's only two-word answer: flying car.
Love it.
There
And
is, unfortunately, because of the media, those two words can mean anything right now. If you would ask 10 years ago for somebody to describe what a flying car is, most people had about same or similar idea. Now we have something called eVTOLs, flying taxis. We have cars with expandable wings with airports. So we have many kind of what is called advanced air mobility. And media calls everything a flying car. The traditional definition of the flying car is an actual car, a regular car, drivable car, with the vertical takeoff and the flight. It's unbelievably challenging, and due to technical limitations was almost pretty much impossible to do before. And right now we just got to the point where it's technically possible, hence we actually, and again, if people would look at the videos or if you're going to show the videos, actually built something which actually has everything in the definition of the traditional flying car.
wow. And we're not just talking, you know, what's the word I'm thinking? Oh my gosh. The uh,
eVTOL flying taxi.
yeah,
For,
what people think of is just, the big rotors out to the side blowing. I mean, and this thing looks like a car and it drives like a car, correct?
right. It's actually the other way around. It is a car first and foremost, and an aircraft second. It's a car which can do the vertical takeoff unlike an aircraft which has wheels for driving. So
It's
first and foremost, it's a car.
first and foremost a car. So your vision of how this might be, let's say we're out in a smaller rural area to get started. Explain a little bit about what the vision of what this might look like. So someone's driving along and kind of go from there.
Sure. So there is a short-term vision and a long-term vision, right? Because if I'm going to start describing long-term vision, we are not there. There are many things which are not ready there, regulation-wise, infrastructure-wise, and so on, right? So the short-term vision is, like, as you correctly point out, it's probably more rural than urban area. Somebody would, so usually the rural area looks like this. There is some kind of a town, village, or a small city, or a farm, and it's connected usually by one or two roads to something else. Those roads often enough get clogged, or there can be like a natural traffic, something can like there may be like an accident or something like that. So people need a reliable and much faster way, even in rural areas, to commute to something, because every time if there is like a one road connecting your rural area to something else, you're completely dependent on that road. And every morning when you leave your house, you have a 50-50 chance that something can happen on that road, and you may not reach your destination in time. That's when flying cars come in, because you would get in your car in your garage. You would drive it along your regular path. If you see that the traffic is not normal, or like it's not just moving freely, you would get probably off the road in some area where you can take off. And that can be any area. It doesn't have to be like a vertiport, right? Any area, but you probably would not be taking off from the actual freeway. You would take off, and you would fly to your destination, or you would fly for some short period. You would land again, not on a road, but somewhere off-road, and then you would continue driving. The other scenario, you would actually fly door to door, or another scenario, you would drive door to door. So it gives you three options: driving door to door, flying door to door, or the combination of driving and flying. So the result of it, you have a dependable timing on your commute. That commute does not depend on traffic. It's reliable, and which is a completely separate conversation, it's actually safer than your regular commute.
It's crazy. What made you commit to doing this? When people say you can't do this, right? It's like, oh, it can't be done.
Well, so I have like a lot of again, there's like 4 founders, and each of the founders, Konstantin, Oleg, and Paul, have their own motivation. I was actually living in Palo Alto and working in South San Francisco. That commute is crazy. So the very simple thing, which kind of we learned in Silicon Valley, if you see a problem, fix it. I literally had like a crazy commute, going to work in South San Francisco and going back to Palo Alto here in Silicon Valley. So there needed to be some kind of a solution. Turns out that in 2015, a lot of technologies matured. It's a lot of separate technologies, right? It's not just one technology. It's battery technology, it's composite materials, it's sensors, rapid prototyping, drone software. There's a lot technologies. All of those technologies were not mature enough, like let's say before 2015. So we actually got to the point where you imagine something, as you said before, something crazy, something which is science fiction, but then it has to be combined with a hardcore technology reality. A lot of people dream of interesting stuff. This is why we have Hollywood. This is why we have science fiction. And this is great, that what inspires us. But I think our job, especially here in Silicon Valley, is to take those dreams and try to apply known technology to those dreams, right? And in most cases, it's not a single technology, it's actually multiple technologies which you take, right? Which means you have to understand those technologies, you have to understand their limitation, and you have to apply them. To that, there is a semi-funny anecdote that when we met in 2015, because my expertise is not in aeronautics, not in composite materials and everything I just said, right? The batteries and so on. My co-founders, this is where their expertise is, like Ole, Konstantin, and Paul, right? So I asked them, based on the modern technologies, based on what we have, how long is it going to take for us to build a prototype and actually show it to people? So they said it's going to take about 6 months. That was 10 years ago.
And there's been a huge range of reactions about this online and in the media. What's the most common misconception that you've noticed or see?
The most common misconceptions are usually about safety, right? They're crazy drivers. These things are gonna fall on your head. This is gonna be like a nightmare, like with safety. I don't want to, if you're going to want to get into this conversation right now, but it's a huge, huge topic, because safety is actually a lot of separate things. Almost all of them are misconception because people don't understand how technology works. Not only technology, people have to understand how technology works, how the current regulation works, how the future regulation works, how this applied, and how it's actually safer not only than traditional aircraft, it's actually safer than traditional cars. But again, tell me when you want to get into that discussion, because it's a long and deep discussion. That's one of the common misconceptions. Another
And go ahead. Sorry.
Sure. There are other common misconceptions there too. That it's going to be bad for environment, even though it's actually better for environment than electric vehicles. The most common misconception that Elon Musk invested in Alef. That's not true. Like completely not true. There are other misconceptions. It's just a big drone. The other misconception is you can have only a good car or a good aircraft, but not both. So there are a lot of misconceptions, and I don't think your show is long enough for me to clear all of them. But I think safety is the most important one.
And imagine from the outside looking in, you look at safety, but then it's just the whole idea of how the logistics, with roads, we have years of building roads, and the white line down the on the side, the yellow line down the middle, right? The dash lines. And I would imagine, and maybe you haven't even thought this far ahead because you just got to get the technology there. But from the outside looking in, I'm thinking, how do you control this without cars just crashing into cars?
So you're talking about the regulation aspect, right? Oh, well, actually, you're talking about the traffic management aspect,
I
right?
guess traffic management. I mean, that's probably where my head, and when I've talked to other people that I told them I'm going to be talking to, that's the first thing everyone says, assuming technology gets there, is just that how do we manage that, or how do we control it?
Right. So what if there's a million flying cars in the air, right? How are we going to control that? That's a valid question, but again, this is why I'm trying to separate, because the regulation and traffic management are actually separate questions. So on the traffic management, you know that right now the current traffic controllers cannot handle already all the traffic which we have in the air. What if we're going to start adding to that flying cars? What if we're going to start adding a million flying cars to that? That's not manageable. Now, fortunately, this is not our problem. This is FAA and NASA problem. And fortunately, they addressed it many, many years ago and already have a solution. So this is not something on our side. This is on we're actually talking to good people at NASA Ames, like absolutely genius people working on this. So NASA Ames here in Mountain View and FAA maybe like other NASA actually also too. They're working on it and they have a solution. That program before had a really nice name, which I can remember, which was Traffic Highway in the Sky. Unfortunately, they renamed it to some bureaucratic name, which I cannot remember for the life of me. Like, I tried to remember how it's called. But basically what it is, it's a scalable solution, right? So what it does, it introduces digital aspect, like API calling. So as you're, so imagine this, as an aircraft is traveling, the control tower and other aircraft at all the time or most of the time know where it is. So there are API calls, there is a ping, there is a way of understanding where it is. Moreover, it also guides you through the specific corridors in a very specific way, right? As you know, that's the beauty of the software. It can scale things. Whatever we had, like, for example, one person doing something, and then we bring a software. Now software can do much, much bigger scale, right? Same thing here. It does not mean that there is not a human in a loop in two sides, in the car and on the ground, right? There's still people in a loop. But because of digitization, you can actually scale this much better. So this is actually not on our side. This is on the side of NASA and FAA, who are actually making this safer. And by the way, those innovations not only trying to make travel like more aircraft or anything like that, it's making it much, much, much safer. You still have a human in the loop, but you have so many more software safety checks, safety controls, guidance. You don't lose aircraft like right now. Right now, most of the aircraft flying without guidance control on the ground. This actually gives more control to the FAA, and it actually gives more safety to the people. So that system already existed. Used to be called Highway in the Sky. Now I don't know what it's called now.
So, some new name. Fascinating, fascinating. Well, I want to shift just a little bit and look back. Started in 2015. As you look at some of the early constraints, whether it was funding or timing or regulations, even you went through the middle of COVID with this, et cetera. Were there any constraints that ended up really shaping Aleph in a useful way?
So as an early startup, and aviation and automotive startup requires much more funding than SaaS, AI, or some other kind of startup, right? So that means, yes, funding is a constraint. And yes, it shaped us in working incredibly efficient with little money. It's probably not unique to a startup, like most startups have that. But we have that even more because it's aviation slash automotive. With a really limited funding, we have to come up with not only technology, but processes which make things much, much more efficient. And the good thing, so the end result of it, you would get a car which costs less. There is a reason that eVTOLs like Joby Archer and many others cost well over $1 million, some of them like $2 or $3 million, right? We cost a fraction of that. And it is because we always have this constraint, and we're trying to make it with little amount of money. We try to make it work. So not only we have trying to fight laws of physics, if you want to say like something like that, but also financial constraints. And that shaped us a lot. So we have a very interesting processes, very unique processes right now, which have to be at the same time more efficient and require less funding.
In addition to that, because obviously you got to make decisions around how do I be more lean, since you are pushing the boundaries, the frontier, et cetera, are there some leadership as a leader, CEO here, leadership decisions that you made that really stand out as being especially consequential to where you're at today?
So we did had one interesting. So first of all, I try to make sure, and all of us trying to make sure that, I think it's Steve Jobs said, I forgot, like, my job is to let smart people do their job and not interfere with them, right? So because Oleg, Konstantin, and Paul have way more expertise in specifically aeronautics and everything like that, my job is not to interfere with them, to make sure they will let work. Now, here is an interesting thing which we uniquely, probably, I thought uniquely turns out to be like other companies also have, which is really counterintuitive. At some point, we split the team in two. So, first idea was to parallelize working because there's a large parts of aircraft, right? So like some team works on one part of the aircraft. Then it naturally grew into actually making separate aircrafts, separate cars, right? Again, it's a long time I need to explain, but turns out to be two is cheaper than one. This is true and specific to hardware early stage startups. One of the reasons for it is because failure is sometimes it's closing the company. And because you have two, you actually take your chances. To give you an example, at some point we had multiple times and incredibly important demos, like actually flying demos for investors. And almost every single time, only one of the cars worked. And something happened to another car. If we are to have one, the company would be done at this point. Moreover, during R&D, what is happening is you're trying new things, or you have to try things, especially in what we do, because they don't exist. So trying things in parallel turns out to be cheaper than trying things in one car. Let's say we put something in one car and it just stops the progress because it's a wrong thing. We have to take it out, report it, everything, and the whole company is standing in one place at this point. And again, early stage hardware startup, time is money, literally. The most expensive thing which we have is time. When you do things in parallel, you're actually moving much faster. You're optimizing the time. Time is the most important thing which you have, and most expensive thing which you have in early stage startup. So moving things in parallel in a intensively hardware startup early saves you time, which is saving you money, because time is the most expensive thing on our burn rate.
So it's a smart decision then
Turn
to go
out to
that
be
route. Yeah.
turn
What
out
do
to be
you,
yes.
so especially at a startup, if you look at the people that are working on this, are we talking people with years and years of experience? Are we talking very junior? And if you have a mix, how do you balance that?
So it's not only so yes, all of the founders are senior, and we have like a very young, bright people. Um, Again, that notion of let smart people do their thing, that works on all levels, right? That works on all levels. It's not so much. Keep in mind, we're in maybe like semi-unique position. We have to solve problems which nobody ever solved in history before us every day. I can give you like I don't know, as simple as putting a cover on a seat inside the cabin. You'll be surprised how complex the thing is, for flying car. Doing a hinge on a door, right? All of this have to be solved in a very unique way, and often enough, people are faced with problems. I can tell you about our cabin. Our cabin, and I keep forgetting that from science fiction, but you would know the term. Our cabin has to be bigger on the inside than on the outside. That's from Doctor Who. I keep forgetting, but yeah. So you're literally faced with a problem where the size of the cabin is not enough to fit a large person, like, for example, Tim Draper is tall. We need to make sure Tim can sit comfortably inside the cabin. That's not trivial because we have a limit on the cabin size. So somebody has to solve a problem where you have to fit a 6'5" person in a very, very small cabin. This is what our guys are faced every single day with kind of like problems like that. So this is how you balance like a senior team, like founders, and younger people. They're because they're working on interesting problems, right? And again, it's a startup, and one day you're solving something which laws of physics tell you cannot do, and then you solve it. The next day you're sweeping the floors because investors are gonna come. This is how things work in a startup, right?
Yeah.
But it's very interesting. This is why people want to come and work at Alef. You're literally solving problem when you're facing with like you versus laws of physics. And you don't have a choice. You have to solve this problem. And they do every day.
It's got to take some smart people, very driven, very problem solving, but I'm imagining they have to be pretty resilient. And I don't want to assume that that could lead to frustration and how people work together and get along. Is there, as a leader, from his leadership standpoint, are there any behaviors that simply just don't fit the culture that you're trying to build here?
Yeah, well, yes. So one is we trying to make sure it's relatively flat. So whenever somebody's coming and starting to act like a manager or in a traditional way, which you do need to have in like a regular hierarchy, that doesn't work kind of here, because here we need kind of brains of people together as friends, or that's probably the wrong word, but like the right kind of analogy would be like a rock band, because one of my co-founders, Paul, we actually were in a rock band together a long time ago. But that would be kind of like a right analogy. I mean, you're creating something, so you need co-creators. The wrong person is the professional manager. That's probably by far the most wrong person you can put in this environment, right? Something who knows how to manage people, but not technical or something. I don't know. That probably, again, this works in other environments, but doesn't work specifically in this particular environment of solving this kind of problems, putting your brains together, kind of like getting all of the things done. Moreover, doing all of this in an incredibly small amount of time with very limited budget. Like, investors comes in tomorrow, car doesn't fly, tomorrow it has to fly. Go make it fly.
How do you keep staff motivated? How do you keep the team motivated? Because I can imagine there's got to be setbacks. It's been 10 years, and the carrot hanging out there of, hey, look how great it's going to be on your resume, and look how great this to have your name on it. But how do you keep them going? Because human behavior is still human behavior, right? As I say, they're people, not robots. We can't just program them and they're just going to keep going.
Right. So we adapted to, again, we're not the first ones. I think many people done before that. We adapted the software methodology to the hardware. So software has a concept of waterfall and agile development, right? So waterfall is, for example, I don't know, Windows NT, Windows 98, Windows XP, right? You work for a long time on something, then you release. You work, then you release. You work, then you release. That's a waterfall. Agile is you release every week. You have like something like, I don't know, Facebook deploys, I don't know, every week, every day, breaks the whole thing, and nobody cares. So this is kind of like agile, right? But idea of agile in hardware, you have smaller milestones. When you have smaller milestones, because the big milestones in our case, it's very hard, as you said, we're going for 10 years. But you have a smaller milestones, right? The first time the car take off, like the first time we open the door is like, you don't know, like we're working on the doors for over a year and we still have to go. Like it's a huge thing here. Right. So there are many things. The first time we did the transition. There are many smaller milestones. And this is what we kind of like motivated. You achieve the milestone, this is great, and then people go to the next milestone, the next milestone, next milestone. So this is kind of that ladder, if you want to, like this agile methodology works really well for us in hardware.
Because they're seeing results.
That's two things. You're seeing results and you immediately see the next thing you have to go. So like my father was a mountain climber, so imagine you're climb to the peak and then you see a next peak. So you go to the next peak, then you go to the next peak, then you go to the next peak. So you do have achievement, which is great, but you also see the next one to which you want to go.
Got it. And at this point, you're also trying to get more funding. Is that right? It always takes money, right?
We're startup. We're trying to get more funding.
Always. So as you
yes.
so the question is, as you talk with investors and you're trying to explain this, what aspect of Alef's work usually requires the most explanation?
Well, so we have advantage and a disadvantage when we talk to investors. So advantage is investors get paid for risks. They do risks. For that, they get paid. They put money up front. If that works, that works. In our case, this is why I think this is a philosophy of Draper Associates and some other firms, VC firms, which we already invested in us. If that works, this is a $5 trillion company. So then the only question is how to get there, right? So again, if that works, we're bigger than Tesla, like easily, right? Because the value proposition of the car, which can do anything Tesla can, but also can fly, is much bigger. So they can see the upside. Upside is huge. And as one of our investors said, if you can do even 1/1000th of like what you're achieving, I'm going to be a very rich man. So this is upside. The downside, there are investors like to invest in what they know, right? Like some like to invest in software security, some like to invest in healthcare, specific healthcare, and so on. There are no experts in flying cars. So to your question about what are the investors are most confused about, the answer is everything. There are no experts in flying cars. There are no VCs which have enough expertise to actually go deep into that. And the ones who do already invested in some eVTOLs probably, right? So this is and yes, right now we're fundraising. We already have like just a couple days received another term sheet. So yes, this is obvious. And again, with fundraising, we also use same agile methodology, right? Same agile. I like what we did so far, and we're still doing it, raising small amounts to the next milestone. We just raise enough to get to the next milestone. That works well for us and for investors. Investors see results immediately, and they see valuation increasing. And we actually get just enough what we need, and then we go there. So it's a very interesting thing. We obviously get a lot of attention.
Oh, yeah.
But then what happens, so obviously investors love us, so we get a lot of attention from investment community. We have 25 investors already on the cap table. But then we get into the deep understanding. That's not only the technology, that's a business understanding, the regulation understanding, the legal part and everything. This is where we need usually either sophisticated investors who can understand all the levels and get to all of this, or investors who would trust other investors who already done due diligence. Nothing in between. So this is where we're in a very kind of unique position. Something, again, for people usually don't know, the AAM, Advanced Air Mobility sector, is growing faster than AI, and Morgan Stanley predicts actually to have the market size by 2050 much bigger than AI, just completely dwarfing AI market.
That's crazy.
Right. So this is another thing which again, like some investors know. But again, like I mean, the growth like knows, but like where the market is going to go, this is speculative. This is what investors do, right? They bet on something, and if they can see that it's going. Yes, right now the growth is actually faster, and the prediction is there. But this is speculative until we get there. So the whole thing, which I'm talking about, like the big bright future where we are right now, the most important thing is that road. How do we get from here to here?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You don't see my arms. They're somewhere here. But yes, from here to anyway, you got it.
I get it. I get it. I get it. So as you're working with investors, you're working with others. There's four of you, four founders.
Yes.
How do you ever have disagreement? And how do you work through that?
So first, 4 was a horrible number to make a decision. It's an even number.
Yeah.
Right. And in a lot of times that was actually 2 against 2, like when we are. Turns out to be this is actually really good because it forces you to make a decision. You have to argue until you convince people. You don't have a choice. So when you're forced into some kind of a hard decision making, sometimes it's actually a good thing. It's a good thing because we don't have a choice. We have to move in. We're not going to close the company because we cannot agree. We have to make a choice, right? So then you're forced to make arguments. You have to force to apply logic, knowledge, everything like that, which is good because you end up understanding problem much better at the end of the day. Whether you make a right decision or not, only the future can tell. But at least that process lets you understand the problem much better. So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
interesting for us.
Do people in the process, either investors or the media, or do people ever underestimate your ability to do this, make it happen?
Uh, to make the flying car actually
To
go,
make
so everybody.
to make it a real
Yeah,
deal.
everybody does. Of course, everybody does. Everybody is like, so again, the funny anecdote is that about 7 years ago, we went to NASA and explained to them how it would work, especially the transition and everything. They were very polite. We met with some NASA directors. They were very polite, but to say that they were skeptical is to say nothing. Probably after the door closed, they laughed for about an hour for like about what we presented to them. Couple years ago, we actually brought the car, so now everybody understands how it works. They've seen it live. We actually brought the car to the NASA Ames. Like we're trying to work with them. It's like actually great people there. But yeah, so I found only one way to convince people who underestimate us or anything like that is to actually show.
Do
There's
you
only one way.
have you benefited, do you think, from people underestimating you?
I don't know if we benefited. I think so. The downside
Like
is because
challenging you, like, oh, you can't do it. Does that spur you on?
me personally, yes. I take it as a challenge. I don't know about my co-founders. It impacted negatively because we got less funding than we probably would. But yeah, I actually like. I personally like challenge. Again, because it makes me deeper understand the question, and again, I love questions which are kind of like a hard questions, because usually that's what people thinking, right? Like, I mean, sometimes there's like a nice interview, and like after the interview, all the comments, no, but it's not safe. This is gonna like fall on me. Like, please don't ever do that. I have like a bad drivers here, and never I'm gonna see the sun and so on, right? So without addressing the hard questions, you're not getting the message through, and without addressing the when people underestimate you, you're also getting better understanding, and it for me personally that's one of the drivers, like it drives me personally there, but
I
there's
was
also
gonna
negative.
And there's what? Sorry.
There's also negatives, right? The negatives is we got less funding because of that. But yeah, that's how it works.
So, two more questions. One is to clarify. So, if I were to ask what really motivates you to keep going, is
Oh,
it
that's
being
a simple
challenged
answer.
or is it? Oh, okay. What would that be?
Um, it- we just cannot fail. What's the other option? The other option is fail. I mean,
If and that's not an option for you?
no. In this particular case, no. There are cases where you should stop and stop doing some crazy thing, which is bad. In this particular case, no, because it's moving. Like we clearly see where it's going. We've been challenged many times, and every time we came up like okay from the challenge. So in this particular case, I don't see the option to fail. We can actually work on an extremely limited budget. So even during the COVID, as we mentioned, and during the downtimes, we're more than okay working on limited budget, while other companies close because they cannot work on such a small budget. So for me, there's no option to fail.
Why do you care about this so much? Other than, hey, we can make money, sell a business. Well, why do you care so much about doing the flying car?
So it's more than a flying car. So if we want to get to that point, so we talked about like my dad, my father. So my father, Leonid Dukhovny, he was first of all famous singer songwriter back home. Second of all, he was his patents were actually used in spaceships. So he was a great inventor and a great engineer. And he also loved science fiction, right? So all of those three things, I think he passed to me in DNA, right? The inspiration part, the hardcore engineering part, the creative part. Hopefully he passed those things to me. So to me, and there was like another important thing to him is changing the world around to make it better, right? Like to him, it was kindness. He did it through songs. He did it through his inventions. He created a lot of organizations. So to me, it's also important to have an impact on the world and to make sure it's a positive impact, right? Which means usually that means solving one of the big world problems. And traffic, you like people don't understand how bad of a problem it is. Not how bad the traffic is, but how much it impacts people's lives, how many lives are lost due to traffic, even versus some illnesses. People don't understand how big of like there are literally $1 trillion in the world economy which is lost due to traffic. Um, to like time is one of the most important resources people ever have, and traffic takes away a huge part of your life. So personally to me, and again I keep saying there's other three co-founders, to them it's also they have their also motivation, to
Sure.
Konstantin, to Oleg, and to Paul. To me it is important to make a positive impact. And what I thought 10 years ago when I actually started this, when I got the idea and created the company, that's also going to sound funny. I thought this is a low-hanging fruit. This is the simplest way to solve a big world's problem. Like, let's take some of the world's problem, and I thought there is actually technology, there's a solution. Let's put these two things together, and this is a low-hanging fruit. Let's just solve it. Like, it's taking 10 years now, but yes. So this is why it's important. Ch- Changing the world. Like, why do you live at all? Like, to drink something which you like, to sleep, to I don't know, to take pleasure, or you want to leave something important and you want to change the world around you now and for the future. To me, that's important.
I love that. I love that. And it's a beautiful tribute to your father also.
Right.
Mountain climber, singer, inventor, scientist. I missed one. What was the
Uh,
other? There was
he,
some.
he actually he was a CEO of his own big companies too, so he was
Oh
also
my gosh, that's
entrepreneur and so
amazing. All right.
on. There are many things which he did, yes, but
Oh,
I learned
that'll
from
be
him, and I hope I got something in DNA from him.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. All right, last question. I ask all my guests this. What is the question you wish people would ask you, but they don't? They don't know to ask you, and you wish people would.
Well, we haven't addressed the big elephant in the room yet. And that's probably the question. And big elephant in the room is safety. People assume things that flying cars are not safe. They assume that integration of flying cars into existing ground and air infrastructure is not safe without actually asking that. That's a big, big elephant in the room. And you know that our company will not have a single customer without safety. We will not be allowed to do anything without safety. So our company completely depends on safety, and 90% of what we do is pretty much safety. Now, the question to you, which I'll address back to you, is how much time do we have to talk about safety?
A little bit. Maybe that'll
Okay.
be that'll be on the next future discussion.
So very brief. Again, this is a deep topic, and I'm not going to address everything on safety. And this is again going to leave a lot of talks. But basically, so a couple important things to understand. First of all, there are 8 independent motor, propeller, speed controller systems independent of each other, which means the redundancy is much, much more than any traditional aircraft in which you flew. Not only in the propulsion system, but there's also other systems. Other systems can step in. That's also true about the electric propulsion. There is also redundancy there. There are other systems too. In addition to that, unlike traditional aircraft that can literally land anywhere and drive, because of the use of the really light composite materials, like specially laid out carbon fiber, that we can have a ballistic parachute, which means it's a very small, easy parachute for the whole car, right? And there are everything is enclosed. There are all the software controls and so on. So it's levels safer than traditional airplanes and helicopters today. Also, safety versus the car on the ground. On a car on the ground, you usually have an accident when 2 or more cars try to occupy the same space. Moreover, most of the damage happens when you hit something secondary, which is a curb or a tree. This is where the damage. In the air, there's much more room, so there's so much less likelihood of this collision. Not only that, remember I told you about that system, the guidance system in the air, right? So that guidance system also prevents that. Moreover, there is technology already in Alef car, which will take the bad drivers and bad driver on the ground and bad driver in the air, will make it much more safer, like an object detection, object avoidance, the other systems and so on. Another thing people completely don't understand, the higher up you are, it's better because you have more time to recover. There are many systems which can step in, and they can land you very safely, very easily the higher up you are. Actually, the most dangerous part is about 50 feet from the ground. The higher you go, it's actually more safer there, right? So I can go on for hours and hours and hours and hours. But technology, the way it is used, what it is, how it fits into the existing infrastructure. They're more than welcome to see other interviews or articles written where I actually go deeper into that. But this is levels more safer than your traditional aircraft and even than a traditional car. And this is one of the most common misconceptions, and this is what people assume rather than ask.
That's a good point then. That's something that people can take from this, hopefully. Well, that is our time. You have been an absolute fabulous guest, and I appreciate you being here. If someone wants to learn more, get in touch, what is the best way for them to do that?
Sure. So first of all, there is a website, alef.aero. I cannot pronounce aero, so people think it's a completely different word. Again, it's alef, ALEF.aero. Or you're welcome to look me up on LinkedIn. It's just my name, Jim Dukhovny. If you're gonna add me, please say something, because just not that. But yeah, I'd love to talk to people, and yeah, that's a way to get in touch.
Well, thank you so much for being with me, Jim. It's been absolute pleasure, and I'm excited for the future with Alef and what you're going to be doing. So thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, David. Thank you.
Folks, this is Inside the Leader's Mind. I'm David Susan. If you've enjoyed this, please share it. Please subscribe. Tell others about it. Thank you so much for being with me. And until next time, bye.